assists condo and homeowner associations since 1989. Barry Ansbacher is Florida Bar Board certified in construction law, real estate law, and condominium law. More information at 737-4600 or on the web at ansbacherlaw.com.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Ann Schindler. On today's First Coast Connect, after a bitterly divided election season, we check in with a group of local college students trying to foster civil discourse in a hyper-partisan landscape. Then, it's not just for grown-ups anymore. We discover a pre-K program teaching orchestral music to the youngest learners, and why considering an extreme home makeover could help benefit Jacksonville's premier children's hospital. Plus, when the giving is as good as the getting, we'll tell you how you can celebrate Giving Tuesday with WJCT Public Media. Join the conversation. Give us a call at 904-549-2937. You can also email First Coast Connect at WJCT.org or tag us on social. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. There have been strong reactions to President Biden's decision to pardon his son Hunter. That includes for federal convictions in 2 cases against Hunter Biden, including a gun purchase and tax fraud. President Biden had promised that he would not pardon his son. NPR's Asma Khalid says some critics say this damages Biden's credibility.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre pushed back on questions about the administration's credibility over the issue. She told reporters that Hunter was singled out because of his last name being Biden. We have not heard from the president directly. He issued this statement just as he was heading overseas to Angola.
NPR's Asma Khalid reporting. Biden is in Angola to promote a U.S.-backed transit project. It's a railway intended to help ship important metals from other African countries to Angola's port on the Atlantic Ocean. President-elect Donald Trump says he will attend the reopening of Notre Dame Cathedral this weekend in Paris. NPR's Eleanor Beardsley reports.
It's a huge success for the French government and especially President Emmanuel Macron, who vowed to reopen the church 5 years after it nearly collapsed in the fire. Since then, 2,000 artisans from around France, trained in traditional skills like stone carving and iron forging, worked to bring the cathedral back to its former splendor. Trump wrote on social media, President Emmanuel Macron has done a wonderful job ensuring that Notre Dame has been restored to its full level of glory. Macron was among the first global leaders to congratulate Trump on his election victory, posting a message on X even before the Associated Press called the race. Eleanor Beardsley, NPR News, Paris.
Writing on his social media account, Trump repeated a campaign promise to block the sale of U.S. steel to Nippon Steel of Japan. It's a view shared by President Biden, who had expressed national security concerns. Critics say blocking the deal could discourage other foreign investment in the U.S. The $14 billion deal was announced a year ago. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is proposing a new rule to better protect Americans' financial data from scammers and thieves. NPR's Laurel Walmsley reports.
For more than 50 years, the Fair Credit Reporting Act has protected consumer privacy by restricting how consumer reporting agencies can use personal information. But a growing industry of data brokers has avoided compliance with that law, even as they collect and sell enormous troves of sensitive financial data. Now the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is proposing a rule that would ensure financial data brokers comply with that law. CFPB Director Rohit Chopra says the rule will help protect Americans' personal information.
Often our adversaries don't need to hack anything. Data brokers are making this data available to anyone willing to pay a price.
It's not known whether the incoming Trump administration will support the rule. Laurel Walmsley, NPR News, Washington.
You're listening to NPR.
And you're listening to WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. The Jacksonville Jaguars are said to be considering keeping quarterback Trevor Lawrence out for the rest of the season. Lawrence signed a 5-year, $275 million contract in June. He was carted off the field with a brain injury Sunday after taking a violent shot to the face mask. It was Lawrence's second concussion in less than a year. He'd also spent the 3 weeks prior to the Houston game nursing a sprained left shoulder, an injury that sports analysts say likely needs surgery. The 23-20 loss to Houston dropped the Jags to 2-10 on the season. They'll take on the 3-9 Titans this Sunday afternoon in Tennessee. Kickoff is set for 1. A Georgia judge has thrown out a lawsuit challenging a Savannah city ordinance that punishes people who leave guns in unlocked cars. The Chatham County Superior Court judge ruled the Georgia gun owner who filed the lawsuit lacks legal standing because he doesn't live in Savannah, nor has he been charged for breaking the law. Savannah City Council voted unanimously in April to make storing guns in unlocked vehicles punishable by up to $1,000 and a fine and 30 days in jail. The challenger argued the ordinance violates a Georgia law that prohibits local governments from regulating the possession, ownership, transport, and sale of firearms. It'll be a cool day overall in Northeast Florida. We'll have highs in the mid-50s, mostly clear overnight, lows in the mid-30s.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the estate of Jane Gross, whose bequest supports NPR's commitment to creating a more informed public by distributing programming that meets the highest standards of public service and journalism. This is NPR.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health.
Good morning. I'm Ann Schindler, and this is First Coast Connect. Today, we circle back with a group of local college students aiming to bring nonpartisan politics to campus conversations. Later in the program, children learning the cello and remembering public media on Giving Tuesday. But first, shortly before the November elections, we introduced you to a group of students aiming to create civil spaces for difficult political conversations. We wanted to check back in with them in the wake of November 5th. So joining us for a progress report is Hannah Gerber, president of the Political Forum at Flagler College. Good morning, Hannah.
Good morning. How are you?
Very well, thank you. We're also joined by Manny Marcantoni, the forum's vice president. Good morning, Manny.
Good morning.
And Gabriel James, the group's public outreach coordinator. Hey, Gabriel, welcome back.
Hi, Ann. It's great to be back.
It's great to have you. So, Hannah, start just by telling us a little bit about your experience on Election Day.
It was definitely a crazy day because, of course, we didn't know for a really long time the results. So I think we were kind of wanting to have a group meeting that day on that Wednesday. So we were kind of scrambling together and trying to figure out how we can get our club to meet, which we ended up doing, which was really nice. And I think overall it was a very calming day as we tried to make it as stress-free as possible.
And why was it important for you to have a group meeting after the election? What were you going for?
I think because of the different emotions that would come with either way, just having everybody meet, we can kind of talk about the reality of things and, have a safe space to talk about what people are feeling.
Mm-hmm. Manny, was this the first election that you were able to participate in, presidential election?
Yes, it was.
And so how did it go for you?
It was good. I voted by mail, and it was a really smooth process getting my ballot. Being the first time voting, I actually really appreciated having to vote at home with the mail ballot because I had time to really look into every decision I was making rather than feeling pressured in the moment to make one. So I really actually enjoyed my first time voting.
Yeah. And it was a really complicated ballot. It was a long ballot. There were a lot of races, a lot of kind of more obscure races, I think, for people, judge retention, the, ballot initiatives that were on, some of which were complicated and some of which were really high profile, including, abortion rights and marijuana legalization, recreational marijuana, both of which failed. But yeah, it took some time, I would guess, to go through the ballot.
It did. I vote in South Carolina, so I actually wasn't able to participate in those decisions. But being here and those decisions do affect me, I did look into a lot of them and was interested in the results.
Yeah. And Gabe, Hannah alluded to the fact that there was this desire to get together, talk through the election results. There were a lot of campuses in this country that caught some flack for sort of a reaction, that I think some people felt was a little bit coddling of students. There was having hot cocoa and sessions to kind of connect and to, in some cases, grieve the election results. What was the vibe of your meeting? How did you conduct it? What was the sensibility primarily of the students who were there?
Well, I would say that at our meeting that we had, we didn't have a whole lot of emotional sort of upheaval or anything. I think the general feel on campus was a little more so coddling of students. We had a lot of students who were breaking down the day after the election. We had professors doing a lot of students coming to professors' offices to talk about the results of the election and what kind of options they have. A lot of people felt like their rights had been stripped from them. So there was certainly a really strange sort of new type of polarization that took place on campus as you had Trump voters who felt very empowered by the results of the election, and then you had Kamala supporters who were completely distraught after November 6th.
And how, Anna, did the ballot amendment regarding abortion impact the students? Was that also a salient issue that people were responding to, or are they primarily focused on the presidential candidates?
I think that was the main issue. I would say just getting the general consensus that I got is that was the one to really look at. Um, and I definitely think there was some heartbreak and some, like Gabe said, a lot of people feeling just breaking down over it because it is that feeling of getting, your rights stripped away in that sense. So, I feel like on campus there was definitely a lot of that was the one that we were all watching. I know I was watching that one just to see, how it ended up. And I think that was like the main discussion I had in class with a lot of professors of is it or is it not. That was kind of the main one because it's just so new because it's the first time it's been on the ballot. Um,
And also an issue that will likely impact a lot of people your age,
right.
male or
Yes.
female. Yeah.
Absolutely. So
And so, Manny, did most of the kids that you know who were able to vote, did they actually vote?
I think the majority of people that I know voted. I think that there were some difficulties for some people getting their mail ballots. I personally had a really smooth experience, but I know for some people it's really difficult to go to your local voting office, or some counties make it really complicated. So I think the people that could vote that I know did vote.
And complicated how? You mean because students are perhaps coming from out of state, or what was the obstacle?
Yes, I think a lot of out of state students had issues. Maybe not a lot, that might be an exaggeration, but I think definitely there were issues, things getting lost in the mail, things such as that, or not sending them out in time. But I will say that the majority of people that I know did vote.
Is there any lessons that you would take as a group for the next election cycle? And obviously, you will most likely not still be at Flagler. Presumably, will have graduated in another 4 years. But lessons that perhaps this group going forward could take in order to ease some of those obstacles or to better prepare students for the election? What would you like to do differently, if anything?
I would say in retrospect, I would have liked to have a meeting similar to the one that we had before and discuss more of our options in a serious way. Also, I think it would be really interesting to get information about the locations where our members are voting and not just Florida. I think Florida had a really interesting ticket. There was a lot of really important issues that people were voting on. But most of the people that are members of the political forum are not Florida voters. So I think that even though those are really important issues, we could have talked more about what were they going to be voting on. So in retrospect, I would have liked to do that.
What they would be voting on in their home states?
Yes.
Was there much discussion at all about people trying to register to vote in Florida, Gabe, if they were from an outside state where they were registered in order to impact local choices like the ballot amendments?
So you mean people trying to register here in Florida to have an impact?
People like Hannah, yeah, or excuse me, like Manny, who live somewhere else, but presumably would have the opportunity to, as a resident here, register here instead.
Well, I wouldn't say I saw like this like an overwhelming amount of people trying to do that. I'm sure it was happening. I did hear some things about that in class discussions about people being confused about should I register here in Florida so that I can have an impact in the state that I'm actually living in, or should I travel back home? So I'm sure that that was certainly a large dilemma for some students who have to make that choice if they're here on campus, and maybe they're going home in a few years, or because it's a huge decision that you're making for the state.
Sure. A lot of students from Flagler College, in my experience, stick around too in St. Augustine.
I was
And
gonna say, yeah, we're getting to that point where we have to kind of decide what we're gonna do after we graduate. So I've heard it from like one or two people of having that conversation of, well, I'm gonna live here for the next 20 years, so maybe I should register to vote in Florida now because now's the time to do it.
Mm. If you're just joining us, we are talking to the students behind the Political Forum at Flagler College. It's a group devoted to civil discourse on campus. You can join our conversation by calling 904-549-2937. You can also email First Coast Connect, WJCT.org, or reach out on social media. So I want to ask you about whether you felt prepared for the outcome, in the sense, Hannah, that some people in your group would not be happy with the results. Others might be very happy with the results, and trying to manage the relationship there, given that your goal is to have a civil conversation.
Right. I know I was definitely a little bit stressed out about it. I wanted us to meet, but is it really smart for us to meet right after the election? I would say the way we made the call is that we've had a lot of regulars come to our meetings, and it's always been very civil, and it's always been people who are actively looking for a nonpartisan space. So whether they're upset or not, they want to hear the other perspective, or they want to talk about, you know, their opinion, but in just like a calming and opening way. Um, but I was definitely nervous leading up to it of, are we going to have like people fighting with each other? So we try to do a lot of like nice activities. Like we had pizza, so hopefully people would be calm after that. And then we did like a little silly debate with like little random questions just to get people kind of back into the groove of life and try not to just stress about the results.
And do you study interaction techniques or meeting techniques that people have tried to employ to foster civil conversations, or do you just kind of wing it? Like, how do you manage your own approach to those meetings?
Right. I think because we are new, there's a little bit of winging it involved. Also, I know Manny and I, and even Gabe too, we feel so passionately about it that we want to make it work no matter what. We probably should study some techniques just in case. We've had it very peaceful so far, and we've had amazing conversations with people from different sides of the spectrum. So I think in the future, we definitely want to maybe talk to different people and try to get more advice on that. But as of right now, we're doing pretty good.
And Manny, who picks the topic? Who kind of shapes the discussion once you're there gathered and you've eaten the pizza?
It's a little bit of all of us. Hannah and I always plan before if we aren't able to meet. Well, so all of our executive board meets before all of our meetings. But if for any reason we aren't able to, Hannah and I have planned out what the discussion topics are going to be. So for that meeting that she's referring to, we created a slideshow of silly debate topics like, is a hot dog a sandwich? So that we could all just talk about them together. But when it comes to those more serious topics,
Is a hot dog a sandwich or not?
I mean, I said no, but some people said yes. But
There's
I
a
think
case
no.
to be made. Okay.
There is for both.
All right.
But a lot of the times we're talking about these things in class, so we definitely take inspiration from that and our professors. Sometimes we do have professors come speak as well, so they are leading the discussion. And then sometimes we've had people come in with discussion topics that they want us to talk about in that moment, and we all research it together.
And so when you're having these conversations as this group, Gabe, are you also seeing some of these discussions reflected in class? How have your professors responded to this election season? How have they managed their own emotions about the outcome since the election day?
So there's some professors that are very neutral about talking about the results of the election. The professor that we sort of based our club's discussions off of has a very unique way of kind of keeping his own views very, very hidden. So it's like a mystery to try and figure out how he particularly leans, and that's fosters great classroom discussion because we're all able to kind of talk about what we think without feeling like there is pressure coming from the teacher, any sort of uh, like type of way that he's trying to lean the discussion. Though there are other professors that have a tendency to, I don't want to use the word indoctrination because that's not what they're trying to do, but there's this, some people might say that, this sense of pushing their views and their values onto students to maybe because they're so passionate about it, maybe they don't even realize they're doing it. But especially after the election, it's more frequent with people being so distraught or passionate about the results of the election.
And Hannah, I think the last time we spoke, you said that you worried, or you at least felt that there was a some diminishment of more conservative views on campus, or pressure that perhaps people who had those views felt because they were outnumbered or perhaps less vocal. Give me a pulse about how that has changed, if at all, since the election.
I don't know if it's necessarily changed. I think I talked about last time too of the pressure of a lot of people who may be conservative or lean one way, of saying something in front of their professor and their professor not agreeing, and kind of worried about that aspect. I think after the election, I definitely think there was a little bit of an upheaval of people being more confident talking about it, um, which I think is a great thing at the end of the day, of people just wanting to share their opinion. I don't know if that's necessarily going to stick true forever, but um, I think I think they started to get a little bit more vocal on campus for sure.
And that, the youth vote, Manny, really did, in many ways, they supported Kamala Harris by a margin, but much less so than in previous elections. I mean, in previous elections, Democratic candidates have held over 60% of the youth vote. And in this case, she got 54%, which is, a big drop. What do you sense as what was most responsible for that shift in the youth vote? What do you think that the kids on campus and the kids that you know are voting on primarily?
I think a lot of people were voting on the Florida amendments that were there. I know that they didn't pass, but I also know that they got more than 50% of the votes. I think a lot of people were focused on social issues rather than candidates. But at the same time, I think a lot of people were voting for candidates and not for parties this time. I wasn't expecting the outcome because of kind of the sentiment that I see on campus.
In the presidential race?
Yes. So I don't really have a sense of that.
Mm-hmm. And Gabe, one of the big stories after this election, the results, was the incoming president's appeal to young men, which he apparently had good success with in terms of reaching that demographic. A lot of work with, Twitch streamers and celebrities and rappers and people who are kind of known as podcast bros, but, reaching through social media channels pretty effectively to reach young men. Did you feel that shift happening with your own group of peers?
Certainly, the appeal of the right in this election with youth voters through social media was incredibly, the right was incredibly effective with it. They are much better at being attractive on social media than the left is, and I think that's pretty objective. There's so many right-wing influencers, Charlie Kirk, Steven Crowder, Ben Shapiro, all these names, I could go on, and I could not name you even a couple left-wing influencers. And I look at all sorts of social media. I'm always trying to analyze the media stage, and what the left did that was they tried to do this with a lot of the celebrity endorsements in the last few weeks of the election, and it came off just being incredibly synthetic and bought and paid for. That was something I think threw off a lot of young people, because Taylor Swift voters or Cardi B voters or Usher, or not voters, but supporters, a lot of these people knew what the left was trying to do, trying to just buy out these celebrities to endorse them, while the right has been doing very subtle social media operations for years now, and it was just much more, maybe it just felt much more genuine than what the left tried to cram into 3 weeks.
Interesting. And Hannah, I wonder too if our expectations have changed of what a candidate delivers. I know that there's some people that said, built on the way that they're accustomed to consuming social media, that Donald Trump had better clips, he had better uh, slogans, kind of delivered these moments that strike young people perhaps differently in terms of how they consume social media and what they are looking for or appreciate in anybody that's a social media figure.
Right. I don't know why my whole like TikTok was Kamala Harris's TikTok all the time. So I definitely saw a lot of that.
The algorithm.
Yes. um, but I think no matter what, that's the way to reach young voters is to get on social media and to, play the TikTok game and, have those clips because that's what we talk about is we kind of talk about more of the funnier stuff of like, did you see what this person just did? And it gets the conversation leaning towards that candidate of, oh, they just went on the news and said this crazy thing, but it's having more people talk about them. So I think especially with young voters, I know me specifically, that social media aspect of it is huge. And
Yeah.
that's, that because that's the first thing that we see.
And Manny, I want to ask you too, just about how students are geared towards moments that I think in older generations might provoke shock, but perhaps are maybe just more amusing in a generation of kids who've been raised digesting moments like that. And I'm thinking in particular about the comment that the incoming president made about cats and dogs, which I think initially was greeted with this sort of like aghast reaction in the mainstream media, and then later almost became kind of like a meme that perhaps was found more amusing than concerning among particularly young people or young men.
I think a lot of the reason for that, and I think this speaks to a lot of our generation, is we find humor in those. You said it was so shocking. We find humor in that. Of course, it wasn't funny at first, but then people turned it into a joke, and then it almost helped their campaign. At least that's the perception that I had. At first, it was like, we cannot believe he said that. But then once it becomes funny, so it's people on social media can really twist the things into helping them, even though it hurt them at first. And I think to what Hannah said about how that's how you reach people our age, I think the ability to switch the same exact clip from bad to good is really powerful.
That's really interesting. We've got a call from Susan in St. Augustine. Good morning, Susan. Go ahead.
Hello, good morning. My question is, what would be some of the main reasons that the students did vote Republican? Did they understand the consequences regarding the policies of Donald Trump and our democracy at stake? And do they think Musk or Zuckerberg from X and Facebook influenced the election?
Good question, Susan. Who wants to take that?
I could comment on that. I think that that Donald Trump's campaign appealed, even though it may have been very demagogue-ish, it appealed certainly economically to young people who are struggling right now. That's sort of the general conception. The economy was what Trump really ran on. He really blew up things like immigration to make it an issue at everyone's dinner table, even though it's affecting a much smaller percentage than it's perceived. Although the reason that I think young people voted in higher numbers for Donald Trump this year was because the Democrats really left a lot of the middle class behind when that's traditionally not been what they do. a lot of people vote Democrat because they're the working class, because they believe in the rights of people and they believe in honesty. And this year, it just didn't seem like that. Yes, Kamala ran a really quick campaign, so she had to do whatever she had to do. But the lack of interviews and the lack of honesty and a lot of the things that she said, again, like I said earlier, seemed very synthetic. And Donald Trump, even though he is completely outrageous sometimes with his rhetoric, just seems like a more honest person, and like you're getting the real him when you listen to him speak and when you see what he's doing. And I think that is appealing to young people.
Interesting. Hannah, just as a final thought, I mean, are you encouraged about the future of civil discourse given your experience with the forum going forward? I mean, where do you see it going, and what advice do you have for people who are still trying to get there?
I really do see it going. And I hope that it's something that, goes past the three of us, and it's something that has its own kind of legacy, because it's such an amazing idea. And I know it was our idea, so I'm saying it like that. But it's such an amazing idea on college campuses to have a group that is just open about everything, because there's so many, Republican clubs and Democrat clubs, that there's not just one thing where people who may not even have a side, who just want to learn about topics. So I'm really hopeful for the future, especially, I mean, we're juniors, so our clock's kind of ticking on college a little bit. So I know, especially next year, we want it to get a little bit bigger. And my advice for it is, with anybody, college or not, high school or out of college, is finding a group of people where, even if you don't all get along, but you can all have those conversations of, hey, this is going on. I don't really understand this. Does somebody know? Let's talk about it. Because that's the only way we're going to learn about politics and everything.
Well, Hannah Gerber, Manny Marcantoni, Gabriel James, thanks so much for coming back. We appreciate it, and best of luck to you during finals.
Thank you.
Great to come back.
All right. Up next, a partnership between performing arts and a preschool strikes the right chord for early music education. Welcome back. Well, orchestral music isn't just for grown-ups anymore. A local pre-K program is putting the cello and violin into the hands of the youngest learners. Joining us to explain how the concept came to be is Amy Love, director of the Little Friends Preschool. Good morning, Amy.
Good morning, Anne. Hi.
Hi. Brian Griffin, orchestra director at Douglas Anderson School of the Arts. Hi, Brian.
Good morning.
Jackie Hagen and Misha Wickham. They're both Douglas Anderson students. Good morning, Jackie.
Hi, good morning.
And good morning, Misha.
Hi.
Thanks for being here. So, Amy, this is a fairly new program. Why did you think it would be appropriate to teach 4- and 5-year-olds at this VPK orchestral instruments?
It's always been a huge passion of mine, arts and education advocacy, since I worked at the Roundabout Theater in New York. And I really just wanted to bring a preschool program and study young minds and the effects of music on those minds. And I'm studying that now in school. And I know that Brian Griffin runs one of the best orchestral programs, and he also has a string pedagogy class. And I just pitched it to him, and we've made history.
Yeah, so is this truly like a first for this area in terms of this age group in in this demographic?
I believe so. In this area, we have found our curriculum. Actually, Mr. Griffin found the curriculum for us, and they do have young programs for preschool. But as far as North Florida, I think that we are the first.
And so, Brian, you obviously have a fabulous program at Douglas Anderson. It's, recognized nationally for its excellence, but teaching 4 and 5-year-olds is a whole different game. So, first of all, explain to us what the value is. I mean, what is string pedagogy? What is it that you believe in or try to do with that kind of education?
Well, I personally believe that it's really important that everyone has the opportunity to play a bowed string instrument, whether you're 3 years old or 90 years old. And so this string pedagogy class actually came about 10 years ago. I believe it's the only one of its kind in the nation because we basically, I teach the students how to play and teach violin, viola, cello, and double bass. And then they get to go during the school day to our feeder schools, La Villa, Pine Forest, Fort Caroline, and they get to apply what they learned, and they get to help those kids over there. We've been doing this for about 10 years or so, and so now we're starting to see students who were taught by our students at DA who are now at Douglas Anderson and have benefited from that. So it's really like a circle of life, full circle moment that we get to experience through this class. So it's really exciting to see it. And now with what Amy has proposed, when she approached me about offering this to preschoolers, I'm like, oh gosh, we need to go to that age group because we've never done this before. I've taught elementary school, middle school, high school, but I've never taught preschoolers before. It's a whole nother ball game. And so so we're actually all learning together. I'm learning next to my students, and Amy's been fantastic with helping us learn how to relate to that age group and how to pace ourselves so that we can, make sure that we're having the best impact with the students.
And I want to ask you, you say the importance of a bowed string instrument. Why, in particular, a bowed string instrument? Why is that different than picking up the recorder or playing the piano?
Well, there's a lot of reasons. Personal bias. I mean, I've been playing the violin for 42 years, so I think it's really amazing. It's perhaps the most versatile genre of instruments in the world. There are Kurds in northern Iraq that play the viola. I mean, it's everywhere. That you can look at in cultures on every continent, and you'll see symphony orchestras. You'll see them playing these instruments within their own cultures and so forth. So I think it's a very flexible genre of music to use. And for us in our community and our culture and at our school, the power of what you can do in an ensemble with a whole group of string players, and then when we add our winds and brass from our fantastic band program, it even gets even better. So it's just a really great experience. The kids learn a lot of teamwork through this because of how we've had so many composers over the centuries that have dedicated their lives to writing for this genre of music. So Beethoven, Mozart, as well as so many contemporary composers. We just actually commissioned a work by Libby Larson this past spring, and so we got to premiere that. So it's just a lot of exciting, endless opportunities.
Yeah. And Jackie, you're actually doing this in the VPK program, teaching. First of all, what has Brian taught you, Mr. Griffin, taught you that is been particularly helpful when you're dealing with these kids? And just tell us a little bit what it's like being in that classroom setting with such young children.
Well, okay, I think Mr. Griffin has done a great job teaching us kind of just like how, like the basics on like how to teach. And we're more used to teaching at La Villa, or I did this in 10th grade as well. And I was also in 6th grade, the string pedagogy kids came in and taught us. And I just like, it's a really cool, like full circle moment. But I think he's done a great job just like teaching us how to just like teach and just how to be there for other people trying to learn instruments. It's different, like trying to teach VPK kids because they're so little that it's just like more difficult. But
And what do you remember? I mean, so you're kind of part of that full circle that he was describing. Yeah. So you were one of the students of this program, and now you're teaching it. What was effective for you when you were learning? Like, did you already know how to play an instrument when those teachers were coming in from DA?
Yes, I already knew how to play an instrument, but they came in and kind of just like taught us more like technique work. So like how to do vibrato or how to shift better or how to like keep in tune, really.
Hmm. And Misha, what do you think are the benefits of students teaching other students as opposed to grown-ups?
Honestly, seeing them so excited every day is honestly motivating enough for us because I feel like as musicians, especially at this level, we kind of lose track of we, we're like ourselves, like we're our own worst critics. Sorry. Um, and I think it's inspiring for us to see them so excited because I feel like sometimes we're so hard on ourselves that we lose that excitement. And it's amazing to see them every day. Like they want to show you exactly what they remembered from the last time we saw them. Like my kids are already playing on the string. They just want to go, you know what I mean? So it's really like exciting to see them so excited. And I started when I was 3, so I kind of
Wow.
remembered the excitement of it. But it's great to see them grow and to see them flourish and progress and everything. It's really rewarding.
And so, Amy, what do we know about? I mean, if Misha started when she's 3, obviously she's a very skilled performer now. But what do we know about how children respond to early education in music or how it even affects their own development?
Well, the reason I was interested in this study in the first place is that my history of dyslexia and how music is used as a different way of recoding, and how young people, 1 in 6, have dyslexia, and then I just opened up the doors for all the other things. With all children, it's an IQ increase, of standardized test scores, average 100-point increase, your academic performance, social skills, emotional well-being, the creativity, the camaraderie. All of these things are proponents of working in music, learning to read music. I don't know if that's like a cheesy thing to say, still the universal language, but you can play a sheet of music with someone from any country. And I think that's a truly beautiful thing, and not be able to, speak their language, but you can speak the language of music. And so it brings people together.
Have you seen any like measurable difference? I mean, I think this program just started in
It just
September.
started in
Yes.
September. So this is our legs out, if you will, first year, just kind of we do have our VPK fast test, and we have the years prior, those types of things. Next year, we also will be implementing a certain other type of IQ test. And, we'll be doing this for a few years, and giving that research its own time and space. But this is how we're, getting the kinks out. How many kids per teacher? How are we going to make that work? How does that work within the curriculum of VPK? And how can we reinforce the already VPK curriculum with music? And so that's what we're working out this year, and it's going pretty well, in my opinion.
Yeah. And Brian, what changes do you think you'd expect to see? I mean, not just necessarily brain development or, measured by an IQ test, but just in terms of student engagement, parental engagement.
Well, I think nothing lights up all areas of the brain at once more than playing a bowed string instrument. I think fighter pilot is number 2, according to an old study I read in college a long time ago. Don't ask me the source, but it makes sense to me. So just having these kids engaged in this very difficult process is going to produce results. But when you ask people in the work, or employers in the workplace, what are they looking for in their potential employees? People who can work together. Well, these kids are going to be they're working together. They're having to play together. Can they handle a challenging task? Well, this is a really hard thing to do. And if we have kids that are doing this with enthusiasm, I think the sky's the limit in terms of what we can produce. I've had the pleasure of teaching students like Jackie and Misha here, and so many others, thousands over the years, and I know the benefits of this and where it can take them, whether they go on to careers in music or engineering or business owners or whatever.
Yeah. Well, it's a great program, and it's really nice to hear from all of you about it. Amy Love, Brian Griffin, Jackie Hagen, and Misha Wickham. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
All right. Coming up, why considering an extreme home makeover can help benefit Jack. Come back. Well, it's a time of year when a lot of people are hosting events or family members and looking at their home with fresh eyes. It's an apropos time for the First Coast Design Show, an annual fundraiser for Wolfson Children's Hospital. Here to tell us about it is Kendra McCrary, president of the Women's Board of Wolfson Children's Hospital. Good morning, Kendra.
Good morning.
Also, I'm joined by Keely Novak. She's co-chair of the First Coast Design Show. Good morning, Keely.
Good morning.
So explain to us, first of all, a little bit about the history of this, Kendra. How did the Women's Board come about? What role does it play vis-a-vis the hospital?
So the Women's Board was born out of a tragedy in the early 70s when a young woman had a set of twins that were born prematurely, and the hospital didn't have the medical equipment necessary to support both twins. And some hard decisions had to be made. And on the other side of that event, the grandmother said, this just can't happen in our community anymore. And Ellen Cavert called together 40 of her friends and said, we've got to start taking care of the children in our community by raising money. And she founded the Women's Board. And we've, over the last 50 years, raised about $36 million and keep going because our goal is to make sure that our community has the highest quality of pediatric care and that anything that a child needs, they can get here at Wolfson Children's Hospital.
And so the Women's Board does two big fundraisers a year, right? It does
Correct.
the design show, and then it also does the
Florida Forum,
which is a
yes.
speaker series that brings in some really high-profile people. I think Boris Johnson this year, Carl Hyacin.
And we've got Deepak Chopra coming in January.
Okay.
Yes.
And so that obviously is a big fundraiser. But I mean, how does the Women's Board track the money? You know, how much goes to the hospital? What do you do to ensure transparency of the funding that you do raise?
So we work very hard. We basically, our goal is to get everything donated. So we work, we're all volunteers. So Keely, the co-chair with us today, and Kelly Novak, who's the chair that's actually at the Prime Osborne building the city today, and myself, we're all volunteers. So there's no money going to covering all of the labor. We have 400 members that work very hard to make this happen throughout the year. And then we have about 200 volunteers that'll be on site this week making the event happen.
And so, Keely, you're also a member of the Women's Board, but you've done volunteer work a lot in Jacksonville over the years. Talk a little bit about this event, sort of who it's for. I mean, it showcases gardens, antiques, art. It's kind of got a fashion show for kids at one element, which I think is a really special part of it. But what are the components and what's the theme this year?
So the theme this year is the art of style, and it's kind of like a vintage Palm Beach, just fun, bright colors. And it's a wonderful event for anyone who loves gardens. We have great art. We have designers and vendors from all over the country that come in. So anybody who loves interior design, I'm not the best at interior design, but I always see incredible things and it's always very inspiring. So I always love going to the show just to inspire myself as well.
And you've got a few featured designers. One woman who I think is known for sort of this Palm Beach style, has done a lot to kind of work with bringing outdoors indoors and making the outdoor experience, like dining, really a kind of an elegant, elevated experience. So those types of things will be on display, or there'll be featured speakers kind of talking about that?
Yes, so we have 3 featured speakers this year. We have Mark Sykes, Amanda Lindroth, and actually a Jacksonville native, Ellen Kavanaugh. And then we have, this year we've added tablescapes, which is really fun, where interior designers, they style tables where you can just see beautiful designs. And
Like dining tables.
yes.
Yeah.
And so they'll have like really cool centerpieces and they're just going to be incredible. We also have design vignettes where interior designers have designed a space that people can walk through and just see. And when it all comes together, it's incredible.
Excellent. Well, the event is December 6th, 7th, and 8th at the
correct.
Prime Osborne. Tickets can be purchased at firstcoastdesignshow.com.
That's accurate.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Keely Kopp, Kendra McCary, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
We're glad to have been here.
Yes,
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Up next, how Giving Tuesday can help support local journalism and public radio.
At WJCT News 89.9, we believe that education is the foundation of a strong community. From in-depth news coverage to educational stories that impact our schools, we're committed to informing and engaging Jacksonville. This Giving Tuesday, your support helps us continue that mission. Join us by making a donation at wjct.org/givingtuesday and help keep education at the heart of what we do.
Brendan Carr wrote Project 2025's chapter on the Federal Communications Commission. His top goal, reining in big tech. Now, Donald Trump has tapped Carr to be the next FCC chairman.
Step one for me is to make sure I continue to work with President Trump and his team over the coming weeks as the transition is complete. I want to make sure that I understand 100% President Trump's agenda.
That's on the next On Point.
Today at 11 on WJCT News 89.9.
On the next Fresh Air, visual artist Micheline Thomas joins us. Her art was described in the New York Times as bold and bedazzled paintings and photographs in which she centers images of her mother, herself, her friends, and lovers in sumptuous or art historical tableaus as a celebration of Black femininity and agency. Join us.
Today at noon on WJCT News 89.9.
Giving Tuesday is an opportunity for millions who can to give back. But how much we give has been in decline since the pandemic. Longer term, trends show that 2/3 of U.S. households used to donate to charity. Now, less than half do. What's behind this trend? That's next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
Welcome back. Well, it started more than a decade ago with the goal of creating and encouraging year-round generosity, but Giving Tuesday has also become a welcome pause in the seasonal shopping frenzy and a chance to reflect on the institutions and services that you value. Here to talk about one of our favorite institutions is David McGowan, President and CEO of WJCT.
Which one would that be, Ann?
I'm thinking it's WJCT Public Media, but David, there are a lot of competing interests this time of year.
There are, and if your inbox looks anything like mine this morning, right, you know what that means. There are a lot of worthy causes that are out there asking for your support on Giving Tuesday.
Yeah.
And we understand that, but we'd like you to consider this cause called WJCT Public Media and all that we do. If you've received one of our emails or seen one of our messages online or on TV or heard them on the radio, you know that we have put education at the center of this year's Giving Tuesday effort. And that's because this day gives us a chance to talk about some of the things that people may not know about that we do. And
Right.
we do an awful lot, including in early childhood education is something that we've really leaned into this year. Less than half of all third graders in Duval County read at grade level. And when we became more aware of that through the Read Jacks campaign across the county, we said, this is something that we can do something about. And so we have really leaned into that work. We're now conducting in-person family workshops in 9 centers, early learning centers, Head Start centers across the county, reaching hundreds of families in a year-long program that encourages and helps young learners and their families to develop the skills that they need to be successful when they reach school age. So,
And that's a really cool program because it does, as you say, it involves the families as well. It recognizes that, learning to read doesn't happen in a vacuum, that homes need to have books in them, parents that can read themselves and can do engaging work with kids learning to read.
exactly. And, one of the advantages that we have here at WJCT Public Media as part of a network of hundreds of local public media organizations across the country is that we can take advantage of things that have worked in other places. And so this is a program that was developed partly by the Department of Education federally, which I know has become a controversial topic all of a sudden, but it's something that has been tested in lots of other places across the country. And we've taken it here. We've put our own Duval County spin on it. We're working with a lot of partners to make sure that it serves the purposes that those partners need right here on the ground. But it's something that we've done that, again, people may not be aware of. And there are many other things that we do that people may not be as aware of. We're just launching a new screening series, a film screening series. We just had a November event to sort of kick off the 25 version of that, but we are very grateful for the support that people have shown as kind of the Sunray has moved out of town, which you've covered on this program.
Yeah,
and our
definitely
news.
like an appetite and a need for some great.
There is, and that that's what we do, right? We have so many great assets, so many unique resources in the form of broadcasting licenses and technical capabilities. And so when we see a community need, whether that is in education or in culture, in the case of film, or in local journalism, in the case of Jacksonville Today, or in the incredible service that this program provides, what we ask all listeners to think about this morning is, if you value those things and you value the resource that WJCT Public Media is in this community, then please consider us among the many worthy causes that you may be thinking about donating to on today's Giving Tuesday.
It's only been about a year that I've been here, but I feel like almost every week I discover a new thing that WJCT Public Media does. And one of the great services, I think, is JME, the Jacksonville Music Experience, which is truly the best curated clearinghouse for performances. If you're looking for music write-ups, I mean, they're so hard anymore to find a place where you can trust the lens through which you're seeing a calendar of events
No,
that
that's
isn't just
exactly
bought
right.
and paid for. And
yeah, that's right. And and that is one of the things that you can count on from us, is we are not bought and paid for. We are completely independent of any commercial influence. And it does take money to operate these services. Jacksonville Music Experience is a great one to mention. I think we're the only radio service that makes it a point to play local artists on the air once an hour on the independent service on HD4. So there are, as you say, there are so many things that the organization does. It becomes hard to talk about them in 3 minutes. But again, we ask you to consider all of those things. And, whatever the service that you lean into the most, whatever the services that you may enjoy, and especially if you're listening this morning, it's probably First Coast Connect. These things are important. They're important to the life, the vitality of Jacksonville. The learning that we provide is lifelong learning, and that creates an engaged community, a vibrant community, one that we all want to be part of. So please consider supporting it on Giving Tuesday.
And so is our request in the inboxes of these people who are listening as well, or how can people do that?
Well, people can go online at WJCT.org and click donate. That's the easiest and fastest way to do it. And yes, we're always there, and that option is always available, including all day today. So yes, please take a moment and do it.
Well, happy Giving Tuesday, David McGowan. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
All right. And that's our program. Thank you for listening. If you have feedback or suggestions, you can make either to First Coast Connect at WJCT.org. And if you missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight, or you can find our entire archive on your favorite podcast platform. Join us tomorrow when we ask New York Times reporter David Sanger about the new Cold Wars ahead of his Jacksonville appearance. I'm Ann Schindler. You've been listening to First Coast Connect on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
Vickers Landing offers elegant retirement living in the heart of Ponte Vedra Beach. Our Sawgrass and Oak Ridge campuses feature amenities galore, resort lifestyle, comprehensive security, and plans for every stage of aging. Retirement redefined. VickersLanding.com.
Jax PBS presents Shelter Me, stories about animals and the people who love them. Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Sponsored in part by the Jacksonville Humane Society, Subaru of Jacksonville, and Terrace Wealth Management of Raymond James and Associates, Inc., member New York Stock Exchange, SIPC.